Hey everybody, and welcome to episode number 10.
10.
We have finally used every finger.
Oh, wait, okay. Number 10, my lord.
Yeah,
Number
10 of the Lost One podcast. My name is Shenzo the Lost. I'm your host as usual. And you might notice we have a slightly different format this time. We actually have SamuraiNoodlez, who is on this side of me, which, sorry, everything's backwards and I'm confused. So it's to my right, but I think it's to the audience's left.
We'll find out after this post.
Yeah, and then to my left, the audience's right, or rather, no, my right, the audience's left. We have
Hey man,
Shoshima. Whatever, right. It doesn't matter. We have a new format. It looks awesome. I'm sorry.
Hey, we're up to episode 10. You know what we can use those 10 fingers for now?
I only
to
have
raise the roof.
Oh yeah, I was gonna go with the middle finger, but yeah, raise the roof.
No, we can only do that in episode 1, and we that ship is long
Or
sailed.
2. I know.
Yeah.
I was trying to be nice back then.
So anyway, guys, again, joining me, we have Shoshima and we have SamuraiNoodlez. We've got all three of us back after Shoshima missed last week's recording. But, yeah, we're going to dive into Magic the Gathering. So, for those that don't know, I have been a Magic the Gathering fan since the Shards of Alara block, which I believe was 2007. I'm pretty sure it came out in 2007, 2008, in that ballpark. And then we had Samurai, who I believe started with M13, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, Shoshima, who started... did you start in Mirrodin, right? Scars of Mirrodin?
I know the first big one I got into was Innistrad.
Yeah,
but before that, I know... Was it Which one was Zendikar?
Zendikar came out after Shards of Alara in, 2008, I think, or 2009.
Yeah, because I remember playing a lot of allies back in the day.
Yeah, okay, so you started Zendikar then? Was when you started?
I think when I first started Zendikar, and I remember making a core deck.
Yeah, because I think it was... I could be wrong, but I think it was, the Zendikar block, and then I think we had the Scars of Mirrodin block, which introduced the Phyrexians, and then it was Innistrad.
Yeah, I remember
I'm starting to think that I was actually M12.
Oh, you might have been M12?
It might have been M12, because
Okay.
I'm like, wait a minute. That was... Everything sounds like before or after what I remember coming into.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, because I think...
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been, but either way, all of us have been playing Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering for over a decade at this point, on and off. I think most of us have kind of fallen out of it, as far as buying cards and actually playing the game. I don't think
I tried to get back in. I actually bought a deck recently just because they had the new the Return to Innistrad. And there was the Vampire Commander deck.
Oh yeah.
I did buy that, but I haven't bought too much more.
Yeah, and then Samurai, when was the last time you bought Magic cards?
The last time I bought Magic cards, it actually had to be about 3 or 4 years ago when they released those decks from the guilds.
Oh, it was the
I
Ravnica, the Return to Ravnica.
Yes.
No, Return to Ravnica, but it was the War of the Spark where they went back to Ravnica again.
I think
because
those decks he was talking about was right before the War of the Spark set, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I remember this distinctly because the War of the Spark is actually what caused me to leave and lose interest in Magic the Gathering.
Oh, really?
Really? Yeah, and we'll talk about that, but...
Because I actually bought all of those guild decks and really enjoyed the whole guild theme, but yeah, we can talk more later.
Yeah, so basically, just to kind of address this now, and we will come back to this, is Wizards of the Coast... Basically, they had all these storylines, and we'll talk about the Magic storyline in a little bit.
Wait, there's a story to Magic?
You were the second person to ask me that today.
I know there is because you've told me.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
I just wanted to be a dick.
There is. Yeah. So essentially, in the they went back to Ravnica 3 times, at least 3 times that I know of. They had the original Ravnica set, which was well before I started playing. Then they had Return to Ravnica,
Electric Boogaloo,
which I think came out... I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was around Kaladesh and after Innistrad.
Oh, yeah, Return... I remember correctly.
Yeah, I can agree to that one.
And I think they also had Exalin in there. and then they did a Return to Dominaria after that, which was pretty cool.
Dude,
But
Dominaria.
but then they did basically what was the War of the Spark lead up, where they had two sets. They had 3 sets in a row that were all set on Ravnica.
Yeah, it was.
It was like Guilds of Ravnica, maybe.
I think. Oh my gosh, I remember because it was like a yellow printing for the cards. I just sorry, I don't know all the names, but I remember buying the cards.
Yeah, as you can see, we've totally done our research for this podcast, just like we do on every podcast.
It's casual.
Yeah, but
Just like we played Magic.
Casual.
That was casual.
But yeah, the point is that we had 3. There were 3 Ravnica sets, and it culminated in War of the Spark, which was basically the end of a very long, like over decade long story in the Magic story that kind of came together, and it was okay. It was not what it was not what it needed to be. I think that's putting it politely.
Yeah, I can attest I didn't like the cards as much in War of the Spark. You know, but
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to the storyline.
Yeah, well, I was, and let me tell you, because they tried to bring back books for the stories again,
Oh, okay.
and they were fucking terrible. Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah, as someone who really dug and got deep into the Magic storyline, I pretty much know like the entire Magic storyline up until War of the Spark, and then I kind of lost interest after that because it was just so bad. And I stuck through some really bad like times in that story. But yeah, the reason why we wanted to talk about it is because Magic the Gathering is going to be celebrating its 30-year anniversary next year. And right now, today, which is August 19th, I think, Thursday the 19th?
No, the 18th.
Oh, it's the 18th. I'm sorry. Yeah, Thursday the 18th. They released they do the way they now do spoilers is they release like story articles, and then they'll release spoiler cards for the upcoming set.
Oh, okay.
That are tied into the story, because a significant change they made is beforehand the story was kind of really separate from the cards. It was like loosely tied in, but the problem was that the cards were designed so far ahead of when the Magic story was written and released that they had a problem doing that. But at some point, I don't remember exactly when, they started putting like story moments in the cards. So they had like 5 or 6 cards per set that were directly like representing story events.
I mean, I felt like War of the Spark was clearly like the cards were designed after some sort of story.
Yeah.
I mean,
well War of the Spark also was a culmination, as I said, of like a very long storyline. So it was a bit easier because they had like 15 years of story to work on to design the cards.
So they had a lot to pull from for cards.
Whereas, traditionally what Wizards does is they do one of 2 things. They create a new plane for a set, or they go to a previous one that they had already created. Or I guess what they're starting to do now is they're starting to cover events, and we'll talk about that later. But that's the reason why we want to bring it up, is because they're doing a 30-year anniversary. They're returning to Dominaria. They're doing essentially what, at least to me, seems to be a kind of a rehash of what's known as the Phyrexian invasion. We'll talk about that later. But basically, the Phyrexian invasion was a big like culmination event that they did in the late 90s. And I think early 2000s, and they are kind of doing it again, Electric Boogaloo, about 10 years after they reintroduced the Phyrexians to the main story, which they did in New Phyrexia from the Scars of Mirrodin block.
I'm just going to say, us looking at each other is kind of weird.
It is, a little bit, but that's okay.
I just want to make sure you know it's weird. But we'll do it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm looking at you, but I'm actually looking at Samurai.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you know.
Yep. So... But yeah, so the big thing is we wanted to kind of celebrate, and right now they're back on Dominaria again, which for those that don't know is Dominaria is where pretty much all the early sets in Magic started. All the storylines, everything was tied to Dominaria in some way, shape, and or form, and they basically spent, I think it was like the first like 10 years of their existence. Wizards of the Coast existence, basically on or directly related to Dominaria in some way, shape, and or form.
Okay.
They came back in the official Dominaria block that came out, and I believe it was actually just a single set because they abandoned the block premise, I think, at Dominaria. But they brought that back a handful of years ago. Must have been like 4 or 5 years ago at least.
Hmm, 2017.
2017. So yeah, 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And now they're back on Dominaria again for the third time with this new event.
Triple Boogaloo.
Yeah. So I guess to start, let's talk about kind of what interests everybody in Magic the Gathering, and we'll have Samurai go first.
Yo, so I'm not gonna lie, it was the art. I really enjoyed the art. As someone who was into graphic design, digital painting, and was just kind of falling out of anime. So Yu-Gi-Oh cards were just kind of just wasn't they they weren't as interesting to me anymore.
We'll do a podcast on Yu-Gi-Oh at some point.
As long as we can do a podcast about the Naruto cards, I'll have to bust mine out again.
Okay, I mean we can definitely do that at some point, but we can talk about Naruto.
Are we gonna talk about obscure card games? Because I got Gundam Wing.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that, but let's focus on Magic right now because I think Magic it's been around for so long and there's just so much depth to it. We have a full podcast with Magic.
Oh, easy, yeah.
And let's not turn this into what happened last week, where it was a Marvel podcast and we spent 20 or 30 minutes of it talking about DC because Samurai was like, "What's going on with like DC?" And I'm like, "Oh, here we go.
Here we go again."
Yeah.
I asked a single question and it just evolved from there. And I'm be honest, I did not get to say much.
No.
After I asked that question.
No, not until we started talking about Thor. But,
yeah. So I was the catalyst, but he kept going.
Again, but the context was you asked a question and you had to it was like, okay, there's all this context behind this question that we need to establish first. So
it's true.
But, I don't know what else you expect me to do. You've known me for 20 years.
Hey man, do it for the content.
Yeah, exactly. I do everything for the content.
But
Twitch.tv/Ends of the Lost.
But anyway, you liked the art.
I like the art. Just the digital painting style was getting to me, and absolutely fell in love with the art of Steve Argyle from that.
Yeah.
Just because of his Chandra Ablaze.
So I do remember you being a Chandra stan.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Was?
I said being.
Yo, and then that Liliana of the Veil came out.
Oh yeah.
Which one?
Well,
it's the one that Haseo pulled.
The one that he talks. I was confirming it's the one he always talks about.
So fun. Yep. So real quick aside here, Samurai. But yeah, Haseo pulled a Liliana of the Veil at the Innistrad release.
Yeah, the pre-release.
There for that
the
event.
Pre-release, yeah.
Yeah, we were there. We had to work the next day. It sucked.
And the owner at the time was like, "I will give you what was it like it's like 70 or was it $100?"
It was. Was it like two?
It wasn't 200, but it was worth a lot of money.
Oh no,
Definitely.
I'm thinking of maybe it was the other card that was that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was
like let's say $130.
It was a good chunk of money.
And he's like, "I'll give you like $130 right now if you'll sell that to me, to the store."
And in the pre-release tournament, he still got a proxy or a non-foil or something to use.
Yeah, but basically he pulled like the most valuable card in the set on pre-release night, and that card I think is still used in like
Legacy. Or something.
I don't know if it's Legacy because Legacy's difficult, but I think whatever Modern is and whatever the new one that they just replaced with it, but what used to be known as Extended because they switched up so much, but it's still played in several formats.
Still expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Last I checked.
We were there that night. He pulled it. I remember playing the tournament.
Yeah.
We left early to get 2 hours of sleep to go to work.
Yeah.
We were adults.
That bitch stole my thunder. I was over here like, oh, cool, I pulled a Liliana of the Veil. And then he was like, oh, cool, I pulled a foil Liliana of the Veil.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah. So anyway, so please continue with your story about Steve Argyle.
I just got into it for the art. And then I also just building thing, so customizing decks is pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just the limit on monsters or a lack thereof just really intrigued me. Just being able to break the game.
Yeah. You and Fish Hat would get along great. That's like all Fish Hat ever did.
Just trying to break
Uh,
the game.
Well, Fish Hat liked combo decks, and he liked playing blue.
Oh.
So it was like, yeah, a lot of what he did, like he would come up with like infinite combo strategies. Um, a lot of like his decks, especially when we were playing Commander, he would just sit and like draw cards until he could combo off.
Mm.
He was very good at that. But the problem is that half the time, yeah, is like his deck wouldn't do anything because he would just sit there drawing cards and
Wait for the combo.
yeah.
Yeah, but when he got that sweet combo off.
Oh yeah, and he got it off a couple times. And
Oh, baby.
let me tell you, it was.
He's telling me Fish Hat got off.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, that's it.
okay, and how about you, Shoshima?
I like card games and/or on motorcycles.
Yes, which Magic the Gathering is unfortunately not, but Yu-Gi-Oh is. We'll talk about Yu-Gi-Oh in a future podcast episode.
But no, I like deck building. I guess like how Magic has its own like tribes.
Yeah.
You know, I
Tribal.
really enjoyed like Allies.
Oh god, Allies was super broken.
Oh yeah, when it was back in the day, it was so broken.
Yeah, when it was first introduced, it was so broken.
I know they kind of reintroduced it. I actually missed that set, but I heard it was not the same. So
Yeah,
That's
they had
for
to
the better.
they had to
I love
really
it.
nerf it. Yeah.
well, yeah, because you just like summon anything and like all this shit just happens at once on your field. It
Yeah.
was great.
It was a lot to keep track of.
So, just a small thing. I just heard recently that they are now trying to like disband tribal decks.
So they've tribal has always been a thing, and it's not that they're trying to disband it, but it's a balancing thing,
Yeah.
right? And the problem is that, and we'll talk about this in greater detail later, but there was a period where Wizards of the Coast was hemorrhaging employees, and they brought in a bunch of professionals on their balance team.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening was a bunch of cards got approved and released that professionals wanted to see played. And as a result, and it's been kind of an ongoing problem with Wizards of the Coast, they've had like more bans in the last like 10 years than they did in their like first 20. And a lot of those bans came over like a 5-year period. And like just to give an example, like when Jace the Mind Sculptor and Stoneforge Mystic were banned in 2010, I think 2009, 2010. That had been like the first ban in like 7 years.
Oh, okay.
And it was a pair. It was a really, really big deal that something got banned in standard that way. And now, recently, they have like literally had like multiple card bans like every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because the balancing has not been good. And the power creep has been pretty crazy in certain sets.
Yeah, no, Magic isn't as bad as other card games, but there has been some power creep.
Yeah, well, you know, power creep exists, I think, in all TCGs, right? But Magic for a while did a pretty good job about it, and then all hell broke loose.
I'm just saying, comparatively speaking to something like Pokemon TCG,
Or Yu-Gi-Oh.
Like the power creep was pretty good comparatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying nowadays I don't see Fireball anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Or not Fireball, Lightning Bolt.
Lightning Bolt. Yeah, well
Well, they
Lightning Bolt
banned
was
it
part
for-
of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 damage for 1 red mana was a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Well, especially you could have 4 in your deck, so it's like
well, especially at instant speed too.
Uh-huh.
So
that could be like half your opponent's health for doing literally nothing.
yeah. So anyway, so to kind of talk about how I got into it, I got introduced to it by a friend at Anime Expo, actually. My very first trip to Anime Expo in 2008 was when I got introduced to Magic.
So wait, you went to Anime Expo and got introduced to Magic the Gathering.
I actually ended up spending most of my time in the trading card. Yeah. And part of that was because I was a broke 17-year-old who didn't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's some crack called Magic cards.
well they were given. So the thing is that if you signed up for the tournaments, they gave you free starter decks.
No, I'm just saying in general.
So
like, yeah.
I remember that. They still do that.
Yeah, so that was my thing. Is it was a great way for me to like spend time making friends, having fun, when because I couldn't go to the artist alley because I couldn't afford anything. Most of the booths I went to, some of them were free, but some of them you had to wait in like ridiculously long lines for. And there weren't really like, I'm not like Samurai, who's like this big voice actor fan, so there were always like panels and things that Samurai could go to, right? But for me, it was like there's it was cool to check out, but there wasn't a whole lot I was like super interested in doing. And so yeah, I ended up spending the vast majority of my time at Anime Expo playing Magic the Gathering, and I had so much fun with it because I also like trading card games. I played Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid. I played Pokemon as a kid.
I remember us attempting to play Pokemon.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever played it right.
I don't think we ever did, but that's another story. I also don't think we ever really played Yu-Gi-Oh right either, but that's another story.
Oh, I know for sure. I never played Yu-Gi-Oh right.
Yeah.
I feel like I played it right.
But anyway, so yeah, I that's how I got introduced. And for me, like, if there's one thing you guys need to know about me, aside from everything else I've shared on this podcast, is that I'm a huge fantasy nerd. I love comics and I love fantasy. And Magic is, the whole setting is fantasy based. Like it is exactly like my cup of tea. So I got really into the story, and then I went off to college, not that long after, and where I met a friend of mine who I'm still friends with to this day, who had like literally all the Magic the Gathering books. So in my spare time, I like read through like all the lore from the early Magic the Gathering books. So that's how I got so involved in the story. Was I ran into I made a friend in college, and he's like, "Hey, you like Magic?" And all of us really liked Magic except poor Erie. Erie had to learn. We had to.
Poor Erie had to get educated.
Yeah, he had to get involved.
What'd you do at college? I learned Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, pretty much.
That was broke forever.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's how I got into Magic, and that's how I got into the story. Was I was introduced to the books, and because I'd always been interested in the story, but at the time, Wizards didn't have like a lot of their story widely available. You had to like look through third-party sources, like
you had to
wikis
find
and stuff.
Because I never did.
Yeah, and so I got to read like literally all the books, and that was pretty cool. So yeah, so and all three of us, I think, at one point or another have played extensively. We spent a lot of money on cards. I still have like pretty much all of mine locked away in a closet somewhere, but I have them.
Fun fact, me and Haseo figured out when to stop buying Magic cards.
And what was that?
When the person at Target checking you out knows you buy Magic cards.
Yep, that's probably a good sign. That's a good sign.
We learned you stopped buying Magic cards. She's like, you might as well sign up for the credit card. You guys are in here all the time buying cards. I'm like, oh shit, we're in here all the time buying cards.
So there's a webcomic about Magic the Gathering called Cardboard Crack. And I think that name is extremely appropriate because...
It's very fitting.
Yeah,
sure.
TCGs in general, I think, can be very addicting because it is a form of gambling. You're opening up a booster pack, hoping to pull a card.
I mean, yeah, because people complain about, all these, free-to-play gotchas, and it's like, so a TCG?
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, just ask a Chilled Chaos, who literally says any money you give him will go to Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Like, he's very open about that. But yeah, so I figured, since we kind of talked about our own personal experience, let's kind of dive into a little bit of the history of Magic. And so this will probably be where I talk a lot, but if you guys want to chime in, please do.
I will attempt to.
But for those that don't know, Magic the Gathering, the first, I think, official published release through Wizards of the Coast was in '93. And I'm sure everyone who's at least heard of Black Lotus, which was at one point like a $3,000 card and is now like a $9,000 or $11,000 card. It's worth a lot of money.
Hella expensive.
Yeah. It's the most expensive trading card, actually. I think it holds the Guinness World Record for the most expensive trading card in the world. And out of any system, Black Lotus is the one that's most sought after. It's the most expensive, and it's the one people will pay big money for. But basically, it essentially started off as a game, I think, between friends, and then Wizards of the Coast released it, and the rest is kind of history. And here in the United States, it was pretty much like the basis for most trading card game systems, at least early. Yu-Gi-Oh was, I I think you mentioned earlier off camera that it was originally also published by by Wizards of the Coast.
No, that was the Pokemon TCG.
Oh, it was the
Yeah, that
Pokemon
was
TCG.
Pokemon.
So Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, I know the connection I was thinking of. Yu-Gi-Oh! Used to have Magic cards, but then they had to change it to spell cards because they got sued.
Yes.
So yeah, like the earliest Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards have like
It's
you know
magic and
monster,
trap cards.
magic, and trap cards,
Uh-huh.
right? And now it's monster, spell, trap, and then a bunch of other shit that I don't know about.
XYZ Fusion, ha!
Yeah, Dragon Ball
Think
Z
about what
bullshit.
now?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Wizards of the Coast obviously took off, and they were purchased by Hasbro in '99. Hasbro still owns them to this day, and yeah, they're about to celebrate 30 years. So I think that was kind of a very brief history lesson. I don't really have a lot of the details, but they've obviously released a lot of sets. Their strategy has changed a lot. They've had lots of turnover, with the exception of like Mark Rosewater, who I feel has been there forever. Like he's still a super
turnover as far as employees.
yeah. Mark Rosewater, I think, has been there for freaking ever. But they've undergone a lot of changes. As I've talked about, they originally released their story format through books in novel format, and then they stopped doing that, and they tried to get it online, and then they stopped doing that and tried to bring it back to books. That has pretty much failed every time they've tried to do it, so now they're back doing online articles again.
Seems legit.
But yeah, it's been an interesting and kind of a wild time for sure.
So, I mean, at this point, do they just do the magic lore just for the fun of it? I mean, financially speaking, are they making anything?
So that's a really good question. I honestly don't know. I think they do the lore because the fans care, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm just like, I'm sure they make plenty of money,
yeah.
but I don't think the lore specific, like, me personally, I was never buying magic cards for the lore.
Yeah, I think the lore hounds are a very small percentage. They're a small vocal minority of fans. But I do know that there's enough of them that like, I'll just talk about one book in particular that really killed, in my opinion, Wizards' attempt to print books, and why they pretty much went to for a little while exclusively focusing on online articles, was Quest for Karn. And Quest for Karn was supposed to be the story of the Scars of Mirrodin block,
Okay.
which basically the plane of Mirrodin was corrupted by Phyrexians, and there was a civil war there, and they brought back one of the big characters from the Weatherlight Saga, which was the kind of the headline of the Phyrexia invasion I mentioned at the start of the podcast. But long story short is Quest for Karn didn't make any fucking sense. It was really poorly written. The characters made no sense. The decisions made no sense. And it was largely considered by the fans to be an abomination, like a really bad fan fiction, I think is the best way to describe it.
So,
yeah.
Do you think it could have been just that at this point it was so far disconnected from Dominar or the Weatherlight Saga that like what connection can we make?
Well, it could have been, but you also have to remember that it was only 6 years prior to when Karn last appeared. He was involved in the Time Spiral block, which came out in 2005.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it was like a full decade without Karn being involved. It was just Karn basically like it was finally answering his story. And, what happened to him. Because at the end of Time Spiral, he, without going into super detail about Time Spiral, basically the planeswalkers had to sacrifice their planeswalker sparks in order to seal time rifts to basically save the entire multiverse. Because there were like holes in time that were rippling across the universe. And Karn sacrificed his. Karn is an artificial construct, so he was an artificial planeswalker. And when he sacrificed his spark, he lost protection from the Phyrexian oil that was in his heartstone, which basically gave him life. And he teleported away and warned others not to follow him. And then it was revealed that he teleported himself to Mirrodin, where he was slowly being corrupted by the Fire Exians as they corrupted his own plane. Mirrodin was a plane Karn created. So, is it possible that it was too long and too disconnected? Because 6 years is a long time, possibly, but I don't think so because, as I mentioned, there was a very loud, vocal minority of fans who supported the Magic storyline and everything to do with it. And the Quest for Karn is honestly, it's a disaster of a book. It's really bad, and I hate to drag an author who I know probably worked really hard through the mud, but we kind of experienced the same kind of situation with War of the Spark and Dominaria and Exalin, where Wizards didn't really seem to have a good overarching plan, and they hired authors who either didn't know about their lore or didn't have time to research their lore properly. And it caused a lot of problems in the story. And I can talk about like the highs and lows of the story, but I figured I want to kind of keep everybody involved.
So in other words, sorry, dude, wasn't your best work.
Yeah, pretty much. It was. Quest for Karn is, in my opinion, one of the lowest points of Wizard's story, and that's saying something. Because they've had some pretty bad stories, some bad sales. Kamigawa, notably, is one of their biggest failures as far as a set. Very unpopular. They ended up going back to Kamigawa, and I think that was much more successful. They learned from that.
Was it like Neon Kamigawa or something? The set?
Yeah.
It was Kamigawa, but cyberpunk. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, but I'm saying
there was a Gundam in that set.
There was. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That set looked cool, but we still hadn't been playing Magic, and I don't have that much money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a family and kids to support, and so do you, Samurai. So.
And I was buying Megazords and shit.
I don't. I just. Yeah. But yeah. So I think let me just kind of summarize, because we did address this. Let me talk about why I stopped early following Magic, because both of you, I think, have expressed it was financial, right?
Financial / just we kind of stopped playing.
Yeah.
So why buy cards to make new decks when we don't play?
Yeah. How about same with you, Samurai?
It was more along the lines of I was falling out of it. The card store that we liked ended up in another
They moved.
It was political.
Yeah.
When it came between those two, so it was just kind of like, all right. And then they moved. The one that I would have preferred to go to, then they moved, and so that was not a thing. They are now closer, but it's still pretty far away.
Yeah. And because we won't drop names, but out of the two owners, right, there was one who I think we all got along with pretty well, and there was another who not so much.
And I didn't know either.
And I'll just say this personally, that the last time I went to the store with the owner we didn't really get along with, his employees were pieces of shit. I played in a tournament with Erie, actually. We got together because that was the halfway point between where we live. And we tried to play in a set, and it was a lot of fun until we went to go collect prizes, and the employee basically tried to screw me out of my prize tournament, and then got pissed at me when I brought my opponents to vouch that they made a mistake. She couldn't own up to the fact that they made a mistake.
Oh, her. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I told the owner, who I had always gotten along reasonably well with, that I said I never want to come back here again. Yeah. And I have never been back. So.
Well, you definitely never will be now, because I just heard that they are closed.
Oh, they're out of business?
Yeah.
See, that's unfortunate, but I honestly can't say I'm surprised.
I had no idea, honestly.
I know. Zach over here out of the loop of everything.
Yeah.
Just a lot.
I have a friend that's, close and still does this stuff.
Yeah.
And has actually gotten really good at Magic, and now he's my Magic connect.
Yeah.
That like tells me everything.
Your connect, like
My magic connect, yeah.
Yeah.
It tells me everything that about sets and whatnot. And so, um, yeah, no, he told me that, and I was just like, that sucks.
Yeah.
well, I
Not
can only
surprised, but
imagine like
sucks.
the rent over there must have been killing them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is like on the one hand, like I'm not surprised because of the people that they ended up hiring. Um, as I said, they were again. This is nothing against the owner, who again, like I said, I got along with fine. It wasn't a big deal, but
The owner didn't seem like a people person from what little I've seen.
no, he was very antisocial. Which is funny because he was also the judge for a long time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, okay, like you have to interact and mediate, but anyway, like I said, he was an okay guy, but you just when your employee when the employees treat the customers like shit, people are gonna not want to come in, especially for something that's as parasocial as a trading card game
a
shop.
TCG tournament, yeah,
Yeah,
or Warhammer or whatever you're doing.
yeah. So like for me, I don't doubt that financially it was probably very difficult given the area and how prices have skyrocketed there, but at
Yeah.
the same time, like you also didn't do yourself any favors with the people you hired. So,
Yeah.
because like that was not the first person I had issues with. I actually stopped going to tournaments for a while because of just such negative experiences with the player base because they tolerated so much shit. Like I'll never forget, I was in a tournament once at that shop. This is before they hired like all these terrible people, right? But I was working with a guy and he was deliberately stalling in the tournament. Like he was taking like 5 or 10 minutes to complete his turn, and
Ew.
yeah, and I called over and to complain, and because the dude was like one of their best paying customers, he got away with it, and I ended up losing the match, and it was like, okay, like that was kind of the first strike at that store, and then I've already talked about, I don't want to shit on all the employees, but I did not have positive experiences there, and it's really
Alright.
frustrating.
Well, we'll have a bit of a therapy session maybe
Yeah,
later. But I'm gonna shift it, and I'm gonna ask you guys a question.
yeah. What's up?
What was your favorite set?
Oh man, that's a great question.
Ugh.
Zendikar, I think. The Zendikar block as a whole was really good. It was also one of my earliest sets. It was like the first set I was involved from the release, so there's a bit of nostalgia there. If I had to pick anything else, it would probably be Dominaria. Um,
Hmm.
I really enjoyed Dominaria a lot. I know it, and that's probably pure nostalgia, but like seeing a lot of the characters that I'd read about in the story come to life, be brought back, and integrated with what was going on in the main story was really cool, and I really enjoyed it. So those would probably be my top two: Zendikar and then Dominaria.
Okay. Okay. What about you, Zach?
Like, it's really hard to just pick one. I mean,
Should we come back to you?
I know, right? No, I mean, I can tell you my thought process. I really loved Innistrad. The whole gothic and vampire theme was just
It was
up
really
my
well
alley,
designed. Yeah, it was really well
and
designed.
it was good, a good design. I loved the vampire deck that I ended up making. I still have, and because I just love making big creatures.
Yeah,
Mhm.
vampires are great to do that. So
Yeah, going in, well, a little like side lore, going into Magic, I like usually like in video games or whatever, I like being like the fire dude, and red mana, it's a little fire symbol.
yeah,
So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like red, like that's gonna be pretty cool. But like normal red creatures are like small, and you cast lightning bolt.
yeah,
Like, okay, and then I ended up liking green. Actually, it's like if I had to pick a monocolor,
yeah.
I like making big creatures in Magic. Just this big old dude that's just gonna attack you and you can't do anything about it.
Yep, sounds about right.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and so, but just building up your creatures, like Vampire was a good set for that. Allies, again, I had a whole bunch of dudes that just get stronger the more
The more
allies
allies you
I play.
yeah,
And then but those like the Return to Ravnica and like whatever that kind of set was, I
Mhm.
forget all the different names. I really loved all those guilds.
Yeah, the guilds were fun.
And so I probably have to give it up to all the guilds because I bought like all 10, I think it was.
Yeah, there's 10 guilds, so
I bought all
God, I
10.
only got 6.
Yeah, no, I ended up buying all 10.
0.
I don't know,
bought none.
I just really liked just the whole theme behind the guilds.
Yeah, Ravnica is, and the reason why they said it for the, the War of the Spark was because Ravnica is their most popular plane. In a way, it's not even close.
Yeah, as far as the plane, like I honestly didn't know it was Ravnica. Like as far as
but you like the
creatures
theme.
there are, but
Yeah.
I just really liked the guilds, and everything just had its own like, the red and green. It like it was tribal without being just completely tribal.
Yeah.
Type thing, and
you weren't limited by creature type. You were limited by guild, which is
like
a bit more expansive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I really liked the Gruul, like green and red. Is it Boros was red and white?
Yeah, Boros is red
Dude,
and white.
I fucking love Boros.
Boros is so good.
Yeah, they were that in that set in particular. I think they were the strongest one. It was them and Gruul. I think were like the two strongest guilds.
Was good, and also I had a really good green and blue
Simic.
Yeah, the Simic.
Yeah,
I was gonna say symbiote, but I knew that wasn't right.
Yeah,
but yeah, the Simic was really good because you could get some big ass creatures from Simic if you played it right.
Yeah, so it sounds like your top 3 sets were Return to Ravnica. You liked Innistrad and you liked Zendikar.
Yeah, I did like Zendikar. Zendikar for nostalgia.
Yeah.
Um,
Zendikar was gotta go fast.
And yeah.
God, that it was like literally the fastest set I think in Magic history. It was insane.
But I think I'd have to give it up to the Return to Ravnica.
Yeah.
As far as like my top.
There you go. Well, how about you, Samurai? What's your favorite?
So top ones are gonna have to be Scars.
Scars of Mirrodin. There you go.
Scars of Mirrodin.
Yeah.
I love that block.
Yeah, such a good block.
Yeah, no, which will honestly kind of put into play why like Boros, the Boros theme is pretty big for me, just because like, hey, that's where the artifacts are. Yeah.
Not even just artifacts. I just like Boros's like just the whole theme of being like righteous justice.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. But I mean, their logo is literally like what, the fist?
Yeah, it's just the fist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're the law keepers in Ravnica, if I remember correctly. They're like the enforcers of the law. And, yeah.
Just flying in haste, get wrecked, nerd.
Original Innistrad.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know Innistrad was one of your favorites.
Oh yeah.
That Gothic setting was just too good.
Oh, well, it was so good.
Yo, in fact, Innistrad actually like fell on Monk's radar.
Yeah,
Person who was like big into Yu-Gi-Oh and had never touched magic whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now you got like werewolves, vampires, and vampire hunters.
That shit was
dope. Oh,
right?
Man. The werewolf transformation mechanic to this day is probably one of my favorite mechanics in all of Magic.
The mechanic was good, but I never cared for it, like in playing it personally.
Yeah. No, it was pretty good. The flip thing was like, what?
Yeah, flipping was dope, but then just building giant vampires just caught my attention way too much.
As somebody who's always been fascinated and has tinkered in game design, like I just thought it was such a great mechanic to introduce and to represent the dual nature of Innistrad, where you had during the day people were normal, and then you flip them and they become monsters at night. Like, I'm just like, man, it's so simple and it's so perfect. It works so well. So
what am I gonna have to do? Sleeve all my cards now?
Yep, exactly.
Well, that's why they gave you those tokens that had like a list of the flip cards, and you had to check off which one it was.
Yeah, they did have that. Yeah.
No, I know. I was just joking.
No, that one, the flip mechanic was pretty dope.
Fun fact, at my work today, I was going through the linen swatch book. And the linen swatches is in a binder, and there's like 9 like little swatches per page.
Yeah.
They're Ultra Pro
that's great. That's great.
I noticed a little Ultra Pro symbol. I'm like, yo!
Oh man, every TCG.
There we go.
Every TCG nerd knows.
Sorry, I just had to bring that up.
No, that's fine.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And the last one's Dominaria.
Dominaria was so much fun.
that was just cool. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like for someone who was not part of the original and just kind of seeing a little bit of history like all kind of collide on the one block, and now legendary creatures don't have to be
Yeah,
gold symbols anymore.
that was a really big change that the Dominaria block brought in was your legendary creatures. They basically got rid of the legend rule, which um and we won't go into detail, but essentially it was like they modified it so now it's like you can play legendary creatures without worrying about someone else playing a legendary creature and then costing you both the cards.
Yeah, where they just like both fade into existence.
Yeah, because they can only be one. There can only be one legendary creature.
Yeah,
Like,
what is
boom,
the
explode.
Highlander?
Yeah.
That was basically a kill spell at that point.
Yeah, so there was a strategy with that we can talk about with Zendikar, but I don't want to get like too into the weeds.
In Zendikar there was the Eldrazi.
Yeah, the Eldrazi
Those
were
were
the
just
big boys.
motherfuckers, and I'm like, yes.
God, the Rise of the Eldrazi set, which was the third set in that Zendikar block, was so out of place because
It was out of place, but I just love big motherfuckers.
Yeah, no, I know you do, but I'm just saying, like, you literally went from the fastest set ever in Zendikar and then in Worldwake, and then Rise of the Eldrazi was so slow.
Well, yeah, because they're just big, colorless dudes, so
Yeah.
they had to make them so expensive to make it
They did,
like
yeah.
somewhat balanced.
Yeah, but it was still just oof. God. Yeah, so I don't think I ever really got to finish telling my story. I think we got distracted. So let me explain why I fell out of Magic. Because we talked about War of the Spark, right?
Yeah.
So without like doing a lecture on the story, the big bad in the Magic the Gathering story had been Nicol Bolas. He was an elder dragon. He survived like this super old war.
Elder Dragons you can't capture, right?
Um,
I'm just joking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, different. That's a Monster Hunter reference for everybody who didn't catch that. So, but basically, he's like this all-powerful, like, evil genius. And he had like, his claws in just about every major event. Like, Shards of Alara, he was, like, the main antagonist for that block. He was involved in Time Spiral. It turned out he was manipulating the events of Zendikar. He had sent someone to spy on the Phyrexians in Scars of Mirrodin. He had some sort of tie to Liliana and Innistrad. Like, he was always kind of that, like, evil puppet master. Think like Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes.
I would say almost like the MCU Thanos. You know, we kind of saw him back in original Avengers.
A little bit, but Nicol Bolas had way more direct involvement in more stories than Thanos did in the MCU.
My bad.
If you really want like a full on story about Nicol Bolas, the Lore Barians actually did a really good video. Like, I mean, it's an hour and 30 minutes long, but that's nothing compared to
documentary.
Well, I mean, that's nothing compared to how long he's been in fucking Magic, just fucking things up.
Yeah. So I mentioned that he's been involved for basically
forever.
For like I think it was like 15 years because like he was the villain of like Kamigawa too. Like
yeah.
He was involved in Kamigawa, which was like the early 2000s, Time Spiral in 2005, Shards of Alara, which was 2007, I think, etc., etc., etc. Then they had him in like Amonkhet, which was an Egyptian themed set. He was like the main villain.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it was a pretty good set.
It was.
I
really like the theme.
Yeah, but he was involved in like releasing the Eldrazi. Like he manipulated the Eldrazi to get released. So he was involved in like everything. He had his claws in like everything. And so part of what happened at the end of Amonkhet is the Gatewatch, which was kind of like the super friends of Planeswalkers.
It was. Quite literally.
I don't know why, but just you saying super friends instead of Justice League just tickles me so much.
It was literally super friends.
I'm not disagreeing. It just tickles.
Yeah. So Nicol Bolas basically crushes them underfoot easily, and they get scattered. So Jace, who had been kind of like Wizards of the Coast, the wall sculptor, but he had kind of been like the golden boy out of like the new generation of Planeswalkers, and he was a very polarizing character because he was kind of a manipulative dick, and he got his memory wiped like every set or so, it felt like. Because for those that don't know, Jace is a mind mage, so lots of like weird manipulative shenanigans. And he was a like super awkward character and kind of a whiny jerk.
I mean, that sounds like a blue player to me.
So then Ixalan...
Ooh, shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired. Ixalan came out, and they actually gave Jace like character development because Nicol Bolas had like shattered his mind and basically shown him that like Nicol Bolas's memory magic was way more powerful than Jace's was. And so Ixalan was kind of like this, like, kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean inspired set, taking place on like islands.
Oh, I kind of remember
racing
Pirates.
for treasure. Along with a mystery, too, because no one could planeswalk out of Ixalan. And fun fact, it also ties into Ravnica, but we'll talk about that later. And by later, I mean...
Ravnica.
It does, actually. But we'll talk about that in probably another podcast. So they did all this work, like, building up Jace's character again. And they made him, like, super likable. They gave him a personality. They actually gave him a love interest, which also ties into Ravnica with Vraska. And the next set after that was Dominaria. And there was apparently some really big, like, creative shift at Wizards of the Coast around this time. And Dominaria's writer never knew or never saw Jace's character development. So there's a scene that takes place where Jace...
You just said, like, the set before, the writer for the next set didn't, like, pay attention to what happened?
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that properly.
And the way that this summarized is there's a scene where Jace finally regains his memory, they free themselves from Ixalan, and he's able to planeswalk back to his friends, the Gatewatch. And he arrives on a fast-moving ship, which is later revealed to be the Weatherlight, where Gideon is there. Gideon Jura, who's the de facto leader of the Gatewatch. And Jace has a very wholesome, fun reaction where he basically says something like, "Gideon, look, I'm not dead!" Because at this point, the Gatewatch had been scattered, and only Jace's fate was unknown to everybody else. So then Dominaria comes out, and the same scene has Jace written as the way he was before his character development in Ixalan. He's a whiny, know-it-all, manipulative bastard. And the exact same scene. And it was super unfortunate, because the Dominaria story got rushed. So, for me, someone who really liked the lore and who really enjoyed the game, it sucked because the lore sucked.
Mm-hmm.
Then War of the Spark, which was supposed to be this big event. I'll summarize it real quick. The first book they released was the second book in chronological order.
Okay.
Huh.
It literally opens up, no context, with a character you haven't met who's died, and all these other characters that had different character development, it's either ignored or just like in really weird spots.
Mm-hmm. Because it was a prequel.
No, it was the sequel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said the second. Like...
It was supposed to be the second part of the story, the finale.
Oh, the finale. I thought you meant
So the
like, in
first
whole
book-
chronological order. Sorry.
The first book for this massive War of the Spark event that was supposed to be the culmination of 15 years.
Oh, was the second of only this set, not all of Magic the Gathering history.
Yeah, it was the second for War of the Spark.
Oh,
For the events of War of the Spark. So you literally start off your story missing the first half. It would be like watching like Endgame without watching Infinity War.
okay. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So it was just like, what the hell? And then the first part, because of delays and that oversight on that creative side, didn't come out until well after War of the Spark had been done and over with. So you have all these characters. There's a character in there that you're supposed to care about because she played a big part in the first part of the story, who got killed at the culmination. And congratulations, it was spoiled for you because it literally opened up with her being dead in the middle of like this chamber. So you never met this character. All you know is that she's dead, and you were supposed to care about her.
And like, have you seen like?
And you've never met her before.
Did they like release this early or something, or like?
No, it was just a creative disaster.
Huh.
And the way Nicol Bolas was written is like literally, you want to know what he does throughout the whole War of the Spark thing?
What does he do?
He manipulates everything, ties it all in, and then he sits on a throne and absorbs Planeswalker sparks the whole time and doesn't actually lift a claw until he gets killed.
Seems shit.
Master evil villain. Been involved in every plot for 15 years. And his grand plot is, I'm going to trap all these Planeswalkers on Ravnica, I'm going to steal their sparks, and I'm going to absorb them. But I'm going to sit on my throne, and I'm not going to stop all the other Planeswalkers from rebelling against me. I'm just going to sit on my throne and absorb all the sparks. Great writing, everybody. And at that point, it was like, I'm done. Like, you know, I've been part of this for a long time, but this was so atrociously bad that I was just like, I'm done. I can't.
I'm gonna say this.
It was terrible.
I'll say this right now. When I looked at the Lore Barian's video, it seemed a whole lot cooler than what you just said.
Yeah, it was.
But I mean, you know, at this point, everything has already been written and whatnot. But if you're talking about like time wise,
yeah, it was bad. And like the story itself makes a lot more sense when you read it in proper order.
Yeah.
But the biggest issue is that Bolas didn't really get to show off physically. It was all implied how amazing he was and how powerful he was. And it was written off as basically he's so arrogant, because arrogance is like one of his defining traits, that he just thought that he could sit and absorb all these sparks and he wouldn't lose.
Like, there's one character that he hasn't mentioned, and quite honestly, I didn't know existed until like way later.
Are you referring to Ugin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ugin is a fun story. I don't want to make this like a lore thing, but long story short, he's Nicol Bolas' twin.
Mm-hmm.
They're twins. And Nicol Bolas killed him.
Yeah.
And then time travel shenanigans brought Ugin back to life.
Yep.
So which one's the evil twin?
Nicol Bolas.
Oh, okay.
Ugin is the good. He's not nice, but he's practical.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of a dick too, but like he's clearly the good dragon. Whereas Nicol Bolas is like the twirl mustache, I am evil, like bad guy energy.
I'm relating to Ugin a lot now.
Yeah. Only comparatively, he's the good dragon.
Yeah, I mean he's still like he's done a lot. Like for example, we've talked about the Eldrazi. Ugin was one of the ones that helped seal them.
Yeah.
Ugin is a big picture type of guy, and when you have that much power, you tend to forget about the little guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he is the type who I'm willing to sacrifice one plane to save the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's his approach. He's a good guy, but he's not a good guy. He's kind of a jerk. But, he is, I will save the world by any means necessary.
Like chaotic lawful or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, he's strictly speaking, I would say he's probably lawful neutral.
Oh, okay.
If we're going like D&D alignments.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's good, but he's kind of an asshole.
All right.
I'm relating a lot to him right now.
Right?
And now I have another question.
Yeah.
That's I don't want this to go. I know this one's running a little longer than usual.
Yeah, well, we're at about the 1 hour mark, so we're not doing too bad. But yeah, shoot.
This one's a little bit more fun. What's your favorite deck? Like one that you built?
Okay, Shoshima, why don't you start with that? I knew that was coming.
I guess, I mean, as far as recently, I mean, the Gruul deck was the one I had the most attachment to. The red and green deck I made in the Return to Ravnica set. That's where most of the cards were from, because I was attempting to play standard at the time. And but I again, I still really love that vampire or that allies deck I still have.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
So mine is what I'm going to call my dime store infect deck.
Oh my gosh! In fact,
Infect was a mechanic. It was super.
Fuck, in fact.
It was super powerful. Where basically they combined two mechanics that by themselves didn't do a whole lot. It was Wither, which if a creature blocked a creature with Wither, they would lose attack and toughness points.
And then
Poison,
right?
Poison,
Yeah.
which if you took direct damage from a creature with poison and you got 10, you would take a poison token. If you got 10 poison tokens, you would lose the game. So they combined Infect to have both of those effects on one keyword, which was super powerful.
Yeah,
It's fun, for sure.
It was really fun, but
Especially with the set that it came in.
yeah, but so what I did with Infect was the Infect deck became one of the meta decks in the local tournaments I was playing in at the time. And I didn't have the money to buy, all the cards, 4 copies of each card. So I basically created an Infect deck that basically you could pay. I think the whole deck cost me under $10. Like, I didn't have a single card that was worth more than like $5. And I think that was Skitherix, the Blight Dragon, was the center of this deck. But essentially it was a black-green deck that relied on small infect creatures and then giving them bonuses with like giant growth.
Yeah, giant growth was so good in effect decks.
Yeah, so it was like,
Oh, I'll let it go through. Okay,
Yeah,
giant growth.
giant
you're
growth,
half
giant
dead
growth,
already.
giant growth, giant growth, you're dead. 3 giant growths on a 1/1, 10 poison counters, you lose.
Uh-huh.
So that's essentially what I did, and I was really proud of that deck because I won several tournaments against people who dropped like $200 or $300 on these decks, and
Oh, that's cheap from what I've heard.
yeah. Well, this was standard,
Mhm.
so this wasn't like the legacy, or so all the cards were available, which is
Okay.
why. But like $200 or $300 even on a standard deck was pretty expensive, and yeah, I was beating like $200 and $300 decks with this deck. I was really happy with it.
Hey, man. All I can say is Commander Quarters would be proud.
Yeah, right. So how about you, Samurai?
Um, I had 2 decks that I really enjoyed. And one, you might remember, was my X equals win deck.
Mm-hmm. I remember
Scars.
that deck.
Oh yeah, Scars block. There was an infinite mana combo.
Yeah, with the mirror,
with the mirrors.
mirror tokens.
And
Yeah.
I built it in a way in where the mirrors are strong on their own,
Yeah.
like just being on the field, so you don't even need the infinite mana combo deck or
Yeah.
the infinite mana combo.
Yeah.
But if you just so happen to have infinite mana,
Then you fireball everybody.
fireball any spell that had X in their mana cost.
Yeah, and there were a couple.
Oh yeah, and I drained people for life. I
Yeah.
gained a crap ton of life.
Yeah, because I think Banefire and Fireball were both standard at that time. And then there was also Exsanguate, which was a X spell drain,
Yeah.
life
was like,
drain. And then
you
there were
take life
several
from-
X cost spells
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
at that time. It was a very good deck.
Oh yeah, and I was really proud of that one.
Yeah.
And the other one was my Golem deck.
Yeah, I remember that one too.
You know,
There's a recurring theme in both of Samurai's decks. He likes artifacts. He
I
likes artifacts a lot.
yeah.
He likes artifacts, and I like big ass creatures.
Yeah. So real quickly, we have Shoshima, who likes green. We have Samurai, who plays artifacts, so colorless. And then you have me, who played literally every color.
Can I just say though, like honestly, like I had to emotionally like get used to the fact that I like green as opposed to red.
Yeah, because he loves red. Everything about red.
Like
Red.
I don't know what you're talking about. But
I did that deck with Goblin Tunneler and Killing Fiend.
I remember that one. Yeah, that was fun.
I was saying like most like mono red decks like I don't really like as far as just the way it
Dude.
plays.
No, I think you would have liked the Killing Fiend deck.
No, okay.
Because you just, with Goblin Tunneler, you make Killing Fiend unblockable. So once, blockers are declared, cool. And then you use all the red spells that just pump up Killing Fiend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That, it gives them like, +2, +2, or something like +2, +0, all that stuff. And then, huh?
You basically take a relatively small, because I think Kiln Fiend was like a 3/2, if I remember correctly, base. But a relatively small creature, and you basically pump him up and turn him in so he punches you with the force of, like, Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
Like...
Yeah, and it was basically unblockable because Goblin Tunneler made him unblockable.
Yeah.
Blockers declared, boom, let me pump him up. And then his own text says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell,
he gains attack power.
Yeah, he gets +3/+0 until end of turn. So you just pump him up with attack points, and then he gains attack points himself.
So real quick, just because I want to explain the strategy a little bit. If I remember correctly, Goblin Tunneler allows you to make one creature. You like tap him, and he makes one creature with power 2 of less unblockable.
Yep.
So what happens is, the way Magic works, from a rules perspective, is you have to declare attackers, blockers are declared, and then after blockers are declared, you have an opportunity to cast instant spells in that time. So he's unblockable, he can't be blocked, then you pump up his attack damage. They can't do anything about it unless they can outright kill him with like a kill spell.
Yeah.
But it's basically like, if they don't have like a Doomblade or some other instant speed spell that can kill him, there's a very high chance they will just die.
Mm-hmm.
And you put him in a red deck, which has lots of like damage dealing spells, so it's like you ping like a couple lightning bolts or shocks to deal damage to your opponent. You get them low enough, and at that same time, your unblockable Kiln Fiend is getting stronger with every instant spell you cast.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically can like one-shot somebody if you have enough mana and with the right combo. It's pretty cool, but it is something that you have to have all the right pieces to.
It's still also very weak in the fact that I mean, he's unblockable, but he's also not protected.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he has to start off weak enough to where Goblin Tunneler can make him unblockable. So there's opportunities, and the way Magic works is by stack. So essentially it's like every time you cast a spell, the most recent spell resolves first, and then it goes down the stack. So if you think about like every time you play a card, you're stacking them one on top of each other, and then you start at the top and just keep pulling cards and going effects in that order. So there are ways to kill them, but
they're like you said, they're really easy. Just any kill spell.
But still, anytime you can make unblockable creatures, like, it's fun. Especially like in a red deck where red is like little monsters and like big dragons. Like there's really no in between. It's like you either have like you go wide, which basically means you have lots of small creatures that attack and deal, damage, or you summon a big dragon and dragon just flies over and noms the player. But, yeah. All right. So yeah, we have been going for I think about an hour and 10 minutes at this point, give or take. So let's kind of wind down. So we'll start with excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. We'll start with you, Samurai. What was your probably favorite thing about Magic the Gathering? I know you like the art, but like, what has Magic meant to you in like its 30-year anniversary?
Magic to me was just another way of bonding with my friends, honestly. Because I remember when you guys came over to my place and you were like, hey, let's teach you Magic.
Yeah.
And
I did that a lot. I did that for a lot of people.
we sat at the kitchen table, and I remember the first blue-white deck that was created for me.
Ew.
Lots of flyers.
Yeah, it was lots of flyers.
And Sarah Angels.
Yeah, lots of walls too.
Yeah,
dude.
Including a flying wall.
Yeah, I
A
had a flying
flying
wall
wall.
yeah, I had a flying wall that punched back.
It did. Yeah, it was
Wait,
great.
what?
Yeah, there was a flying wall that hit back. If it dealt damage, it dealt damage back. It was pretty great.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, just at that time it was something new. And I got to hang out with friends. I met a lot of cool people when at the old comic place that we all hung out with.
Yeah,
Like that was the place to go.
it was. Yeah, it was our like hang. It was like our hangout in a town that didn't have a lot of hangout places. Quite frankly,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a Denny's.
there was. We spent a lot of time at Denny's also playing
We
Magic.
did take it. We did spend a lot of time at Denny's.
Yeah.
Oh man, I no another side story. We got a game from that place, went to Denny's, and spent 12 hours there.
Yes, we did. Several
Yeah.
times actually.
Yeah.
How about you, Shoshima?
What does magic mean to me?
Yep.
It means financial debt.
No. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But no, yeah.
Just a
I mean,
given.
I know, right? But I mean, just magic, yeah, it does usually means a gathering of people, and usually I would try to gather friends as opposed to going to see randos. So yeah, playing with friends. I mean, honestly, to this day, just the way Magic introduced the color system to their mana, just like white being like righteous, black being swamp, green being like natural creatures, and so on. Just I still like kind of think of it to this day as far as I don't know, world building or just kind of linking it to other properties.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just the guild system, like combining those two different traits.
Yeah,
You
because I don't think we really talked about this, but the Ravnica theme is that every guild has 2 colors. So with 5 colors, there's 10 total
Yeah,
combinations. So
You take like nature and like, which is green,
mhm.
and red, which is what? How would you describe like red like by itself?
Passion, excitement, emotion.
Yeah, and like
Fire.
putting those two together, and you just get like anarchy.
Yeah.
Is the common theme for Gruul.
Yeah.
And then like white and red just make like righteous justice, like
Yes.
just that kind of like just world building concept. Like I still think of it to this day, even though I haven't been buying Magic cards.
Yeah, it's
Honestly,
it's a really good foundation for sure.
Did the 10 the 10 colors, did that also include like the 2 opposite colors of each one?
Yeah, like
Or is that expanded?
like
yeah. So the no, there's 10, but
no,
it's
that's all the combinations as far as
yeah, it's all the possible unique combinations.
Okay.
And yeah, and that includes enemy colors too.
yeah, like
Okay.
white and black is was it is it Kane? No, what's it called again? I'm sorry.
Orzhov, I think.
Or Orzhov, yes.
Orzhov, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like the bureaucrats.
Yeah. So I didn't really play them too much.
Yeah, and then they have the Golgari Swarm, which was black and green.
uh-huh.
But yeah, so it's every possible combination
Okay.
of colors, and that includes ally and enemy colors. But yeah, they they did a with Ravnica, that was one thing. Like in the Shards of Alara had they had 5 because it was the pairs of three allied colors. Each shard had 3 colors of mana on it. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, so they've done some really creative stuff with that for sure.
So just like that and yeah, I like deck building. I've played like the Yu-Gi-Oh.
Mhm.
Well, way back in the day, we collected Pokemon cards. I doubt we really played it right.
Yeah,
I'm 90% sure we didn't.
I'm 100% sure we did.
Oh well, I was just
Yeah.
And then yeah, I played Yu-Gi-Oh, which I'm 100% sure I played that right at one point. I went to a tournament.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we'll talk about this in the future, but Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments also we're not even sure if they had the rules right. And there's a story for that, but we'll share that for later. We'll share that for a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast later.
But yeah, just like going through the TCGs, it's just fun. Building stuff. I feel my common theme is building like a common tribe.
Yeah.
Per se, and just making that deck work and just beat down your opponent.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then talking shit afterwards.
Yeah. Well, you do that regardless, but
okay.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like as I said, I love fantasy, and the world of Magic the Gathering is really awesome. There's a lot of depth to it. You know, like Samurai said, there was an hour and a half on one character, one character. There's a lot. It's very deep, and
the hour and a half was probably summing it up too.
probably.
It was.
But yeah, there's so much, you know, involved in. There's so much to it, and you know, I'm big into world building. You know, I've talked about Dungeons and Dragons and you know other things here, but on top of that, it's also Magic: The Gathering is also a very well made game. They've had problems, of course, but you know, overall, all in all, it's very well done. And you know, like I said, it was unfortunate that I got so frustrated with just the creative turnover and the creative mistakes that I'm just like, you know, this isn't really fun for me anymore.
Mhm.
And it's just I've lost a lot of interest in the game because it's like a lot of my investment was in the lore.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, what really stands out is, you know, kind of like what both of you said about getting together and playing with friends. But my college group that I still get together with weekly really bonded over Magic: The Gathering. Uh, you know, I went to college with one person from high school, and we met. Fish Hat was the first friend we met there, and we kind of bonded over our shared interest in computer science and Magic: The Gathering. As it turned out, one of Fish Hat's roommates also played Magic, and then they had someone who lived in the hall who also played Magic, and that's kind of how this like core group got together. And
Because we're all nerds.
yeah, we're all huge nerds, but magic was the common theme in a lot of that. And so that's what it means to me, and that's a big part of the reason why, even though I know I've probably spent half this podcast complaining about it, I do it out of something from love because, as I said, I have all my cards still. I love to bring them out and play them again. In the
We're
near
gonna have
future.
to play after this podcast, by the way.
Right, but you know, it's a great game and it has 30 years of history, and I'm very curious to see where they go with this current Magic: The Gathering storyline, where they're bringing back the Phyrexians. They're essentially redoing a Phyrexian invasion, but now with characters that have been established at this point for 15 years. So I'm very curious to see, you know, where we go from here. But I think that's all I have to say. Anyone else have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Some final words. I'm Samurai Noodles, and fuck your infect deck.
I'm Zachary1016 on Twitter, at least, and blue is for bitches.
And on that note, I'm Shenzo the Lost, and I'll play any color.
Oh baby, he goes anyway.
Oh yeah, colorless, color doesn't matter. I'll play with you. Wink.
Oh man.
Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Again, you can catch me at Shenzo the Lost pretty much everywhere, and we will see you guys next week.
Okay,
Bye bye.